Barry, thanks for having us here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was awesome being at your shop yesterday.
Very cool, very cool.
But I gotta say, this place looks a little better than the SB3, worldwide headquarters.
Can't compare it. It is.
Why don't you tell us where we're at right now and kind of give us a walk around?
So right now, this is basically Grandmasters Hall. This is, every Grandmaster is the highest person in Freemasonry here in Pennsylvania. Honorable position where they get elected to it. And they run the state for 2 years. This hall here is Grandmasters Hall. So eventually at one point, all the things you see on the sides, all the people, at one point they ran the state.
Wow.
So that's kind of like how my leadership started.
Yeah. And when did this start, being a Grandmaster?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you, 1700s.
Yeah. Okay, so there's been plenty to go through it.
Yes,
yeah.
Tons.
What makes a person a Grandmaster?
I would say their character. At the end of the day.
And time, probably.
Yeah. Time, your character, what you put into it. You've got to be a good person. The rest Freemasonry teaches you.
Cool.
Well, the awesome thing, I mean, we've had a chance to learn a lot going through this with you and getting a tour with Michael.
Yeah.
Just the whole concept around Freemasonry is just really cool to me, and that it transcends the globe.
Yes, and it's proven. So it's a system that has been proven since King Solomon's Temple. So when you look at that and you go back to it, now you have, 300 years of organized Freemasonry to where we can trace it to the beginnings in England. Now you bring it here, you're talking some of the world's most powerful leaders have been Masons.
And it's
a
just
proven
so cool
structure.
that it started out as like a trade-based
Yes.
thing. And then now in modern times, it kind of transcended that into the way to live. You talked about the tools, and the tools of the Mason, they were very specific to carrying out the craft. And now you've kind of transcended that from the craft to working on yourself, supporting your fellow man, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so when you look at the working tools, they were working tools of regular Masons who were operative Masons building things like what we have here today. So you take those tools and we'll take them and apply them to our life. We'll give them a different meaning. So for example, the square, which is the logo, it teaches us to square our actions by the square of virtue. And then the compass, like we were talking about earlier, it teaches us to circumscribe our desires and keep them within due bounds. So if I was a point of that compass and I take that compass and draw a circle, now I know not to step out of those due bounds, or you're just putting yourself at risk no matter what you're doing in life. And you can apply that to anything that you're doing.
It transcends everything.
Everything.
And
keep it tight,
What
sir.
initially got you into all of this?
I was fortunate. I just moved to a new town in Lebanon back in 2009 or 10, I think. A buddy of mine became a Freemason, and then from there, I just picked up on it and I fell in love with it. And it really changed my life. And it changed my life for the better, which is, you begin to learn things and you go through all this stuff, and then you look back on it and you're like, oh my gosh, I did that. And you don't even realize that they're teaching you to be a leader before you even thought about it. You know what I mean? It's almost like you're molded into that stuff.
So did you immediately have a mentor when you first came into it then?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. So I have several mentors. One mentor will teach you, how to just talk to people in the lodge. Another mentor can teach you the ritualistic work that we do through our degrees. And then, for me, I had a mentor who, his name was Larry Durr, who is going to be a deputy Grandmaster, who will be our next Grandmaster. So when I was the worshipful master, which is the honorable Mason at our lodge that ran our lodge, he was above me. And I was fortunate to have a guy now who's going to be the next Grandmaster mentor me. So you take all these mentors and you learn a little bit from each one, and eventually you become your own person. And that's how I looked at life.
And now, you're so much in the detail industry anyway. I mean, this is why we're doing this series now, right?
Yeah.
We wanted to try and expand from, the technician side of things in detailing and really start focusing on people like Barry who are more leadership level at the industry. and really how they came from being a technician like you were back in the day
Yes.
to where you are today. And Freemasonry and your involvement in this community has been a huge foundation for you.
It has. It's been really huge. You can't, and like I said, you don't know why you're doing it. Like, you don't know what's going on while you're going through it. You're just being yourself. You're just being an everyday person. Friends will invite you over. You know, you start learning a little here, learning a little here. Next thing you know, you have piles and piles of stuff in your mind that you've learned and that you've grasped. But it's just like anything else in life. And I'm a firm believer. You get into it, you get out of it what you put into it.
Sure.
You know, so like if like Grant wanted to join a Freemasonry, he could be a Mason. We'll give him a dues card and he can never go to a meeting again. As long as he pays his dues, he's a Mason. You know, but then there's us who really fall in love with the fraternity and the craft. And just like anything else, you start working on it, you get, you know, you learn more and more. The thing with Freemasonry is learning never stops. I don't care where you're at. You know, you talk to our Grandmaster who's got 50 years in the fraternity. He's going to continue to learn until the day he passes away. Same with me. It never stops, and that's what makes it addicting. You know, and for me, it's a good addiction. It's nice to have in your life.
Yeah.
And we felt that too when we got in here, and when you and I were walking around before the crew got in, and you know, every single person that was here was just open, honest. You know, how you doing? It's like you said, a brotherhood, a friendship. You ask them questions, they're willing to give you an honest truth. Not like it's a stupid question, but like they're really excited to actually share that piece of information.
Oh yeah, they're genuine.
Yeah.
And to find someone who's genuine these days is very difficult.
Yeah.
And here you have it. And we got some cool bells in the background.
Yeah.
But this is it.
Well, why don't we go walk around and look at a couple of the cool rooms you got here?
Let's check them out.
Sweet.
Let's go. So this room here is the Egyptian room, which in my opinion is one of the most beautiful rooms in the whole place. I love it.
Wow.
On a personal level, it's probably my favorite.
Absolutely.
And obviously you can see with the ornation, everything that's done, I mean, it's never ending.
And there's just so much symbolism.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
The symbology is
And
absolutely unbelievable.
What's unique is it was all done by hand.
Wow.
They just don't do stuff like that.
Everything was drawn by hand, everything was carved by hand. So like when you look at like I don't even know what this stuff is called, some of it, but anything where it's cut, like all the snakes and stuff.
Wow, I didn't even notice
Yeah,
that. Wow.
all that stuff is actually plaster
Wow.
that was hand done and molded onto there. So
Well, it looks like all of these pictures, like these are like stories
Yes.
that this is all telling.
yeah, it's just beautiful when you look at what it is. There's so much to this room. How long would it take you to learn everything?
Oh my gosh.
Well, and
Years.
coming into the actual room, then what goes on in here?
So this is where one of the bodies would have a meeting. And
Not
what
an actual body like an Egyptian tomb, though, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So what I
just
mean
wanted
by
to clarify
Freemasonry is, so you have like on a local level of Freemasonry, where we're at, we're on a state level, the Grand Lodge. So if you look at it like, not like politics, but like this would be our state capital,
Okay.
where you're at. But we call it the Grand Lodge. Then you have a local lodge, which is in your town, city, wherever. That's what they call Blue Lodge. That's where it starts. And then you can break out into different organizations or pendant bodies. So that's what I meant by bodies. So we have the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. You can go up to Scottish Rite and get up to 33 degrees if you're honored to have that degree. Or you can go up to York Rite, which you would go into a body called Chapter first, then Council, then Commandery. You know, I'm not sure which room, like which body meets in this room in general. But to me, it's just my favorite. And I've never had a meeting in this room, but I've had meetings in other rooms in this building, if that makes
I
sense.
have to think that this is one of the oldest temples in the entire country.
Yes, it is probably the oldest Masonic temple around. I don't know all of it, but there are some discrepancies. There's one in Boston where they say it's a little bit older than this. And then there's a lodge in Georgia, I believe, that claims to be the first Masonic lodge. But again, that's all history stuff that I'm not really a part of. So it's hard to, it's hard for me to answer those
I
questions.
mean, even just the archives downstairs that we were looking at with George Washington's apron and
Yes.
all those documents, like that's out of this world.
Yeah, Yeah, and to be a part of something like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
To me, I love that, you know.
Totally.
And imagine, like, you guys are feeling that kind of today, just being here. Imagine having that a part of your life.
Oh,
This is like being in the movie National Treasure. It's
It is.
really remarkable.
It is.
It is.
So, can you explain, like, there's the main, like, you know, I don't even know what you call that up there, like an altar kind of area, and then there's another one over here, and there's one to
So
the
so
right.
every lodge hall in Freemasonry, this is what we call a lodge hall, is seated the same exact way. So you always have the north, which is no chairs, the east, the west, and the south. Okay. So when you look at this, one of the most in Blue Lodge, if you're in the east, you're like the president of a lodge. We call it a worshipful master. It's not that all the Masons worship this guy. That's completely false. And one of the biggest misconceptions of Freemasonry. Back in when Freemasonry started, the word honorable was worshipful. So you're the honorable Mason of that local lodge that they felt that they could say, hey, you're going to eventually run this lodge. So what they do is you start out in the top 3 progressive chairs, which are these 3 chairs. So that chair is a junior warden's chair in the south. So once you hit that chair, you're obligated to go through all 3. It's a progressive line. So that would be the junior warden's chair. That would be your senior warden's chair in Blue Lodge on a local level. And then up here is the worshipful master. He's the one who runs the whole entire lodge. So that's kind of why up there's a little more ornate, because you have 2 desks. You know, you'll have a desk over here for the secretary, a desk over here for the treasurer of the lodge. And then this lodge has a couple extra chairs, but normally there's one other chair there then. And then that chair would be for our chaplain. And then you have these 3 officer chairs here, which would be for a junior deacon. I'm sorry, the junior deacon would be up there. Junior deacon would sit right here in this chair. Senior deacon would sit up there, and then you have these 3 chairs here, which are like the lower level chairs of the officer's line. So when you start, it's a 10-year commitment.
There's so much hierarchy
Yeah,
built into the entire system.
Correct. It's a 10-year commitment to get from the entrance of the officer line to sit up there. Some people have been blessed. So like me, for example, I got lucky where we had a few people that somebody moved or something, and you can kind of skip through chairs a little bit. They don't recommend it. But I started out in 4 years, I was the master of the lodge, which is usually a 10-year commitment. And then in 6 years, by the time I had almost finished my 5th year of masonry, I was a master of 2 different lodges, one in Mannheim, which is my hometown, and then one in Lebanon, which is, well, my hometown of where I grew up was Mannheim.
Yeah.
And then Lebanon, the town I live in now. So it's pretty, to me, that's pretty cool.
Are there different responsibilities for each of these different roles, or are
Yes,
there like
tons,
tests you need
tons.
to pass
Well,
to achieve certain things?
There's not tests per se. You know, each chair has its own uniqueness. Okay, obviously he runs the lodge. You know, this guy closes the lodge. You know, another one opens it. But there are some different things and different responsibilities, and then there are some learning things that you have to do too. You know, a lot of it's more ritual than anything. But ideally, once you get to this chair, they feel you're a good enough leader that you're eventually going to go to that chair. So, you know, it kind of starts before you get here.
And nobody does this as like a full-time thing. Everybody has jobs outside of being a part of this fraternity, right?
Correct. I mean, there might be a few retired guys that
Yeah.
will, you know, help out a lodge or something, but nothing full-time. Again, it's all volunteer organization. That's why we say you get out of it what you put into it, just like everything else in life. You know, you can be a card holder, or you could be active, or you could be a guy like we had the privilege of, when Grant and I got here earlier this morning, he ran into the Grandmaster, you know, started talking to us just like a normal guy. But again, he runs the whole entire state.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
And I know charity is like a big aspect of Freemasonry, and I know that you have gotten involved with some charities. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, charity's huge. So every body, like dependent body, has its own type of charity. You know, one could be giving to the Ronald McDonald House, one, you know, to like an eye foundation, like the Knights Templar, you know, they're real big on the eye foundation. Blue Lodge, it's kind of just be charitable. You know, it's more general. So you learn to be charitable, you learn to be a leader, you learn to just try to be a good person. That's what Freemasonry is about. It's about your character, your morals, and just giving back to the community and just improving yourself. But it's different to everybody. So, earlier we probably ran into 100 different Masons. You ask them what it's like to be a Mason, their story's a little different than mine, but there are a lot of similar characteristics.
Well, and I have to say, from a Urable perspective, we met you right at the beginning of when we started, and there was no reason for you to believe in us, to trust us, and I really felt a sense of charity when you invited us to that event, and that was our first time getting to talk to people about Urable, and that is what catapulted all of our success. And, I know we're so appreciative of that, and I think a lot of those characteristics came out of what you do here.
Yeah, and it is. It's funny because, like, for me, that was just me being myself. I wanted to give back to the Dyslexia Center. So I was able to take what I learned in Freemasonry, with being charitable, and apply it to my career. And through that, we paid for education for kids. And it's like, okay, great. And it's personal to me because I'm dyslexic as well. So when you accomplish those goals, it's a great feeling. And the worst part is, I shouldn't say the worst part, but I've never met those kids yet. I have no idea who they are, what they did, and I don't care to. You know what I mean? It'd be nice to meet them, but I don't want the thanks or nothing. They got the education that I never could have got with my dyslexia. That's all I needed to do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome. But yeah, that's Freemasonry.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you see it in this place too, talking downstairs with a couple of the other Masons too, how they speak about it's not just giving back to the Masons that are here, but if you're a friend of a Mason and you need help, we're going to help you, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
That was a remarkable thing. And the global scale of it all as well kind of really surprised me.
It's huge. So just in Pennsylvania alone, and the numbers are down a little bit because they're now being a lot more selective. No, it's no longer about how many Masons can we have. In today's world, it's about the quality of the Mason, and when you look at those people, they're there for you, 100%. They'll be there for you if you don't know you, like he was saying, literally, Mike, I have, the one time I went to Texas, I was in Dallas, I called down, found a lodge, and I just said, hey, I'm going to be in town for the night. I'd like to check out your meeting, because it's nice to see, every state's governed on its own body. So one unique thing about Freemasonry is we have no national governing body here in the United States. Every state is separate. Imagine it being like the United States without Washington, D.C. Every state ran its own way. As long as you stuck to core beliefs of the United States. That's what Freemasonry is like. So you go to Texas, and in here in Pennsylvania, when we do this, we'll sing the national anthem before we open a meeting. In Texas, and then we'll we do it with the U.S. flag. In Texas, they do the national anthem, and then they do the Texas anthem, So here, we have to wear a tuxedo as an officer. And as you sit in the East, we have a hat, a black top hat, the top hat. In Texas, they can go in blue jeans and a t-shirt with a cowboy hat, as long as they have the tie.
That's Texas for you.
So everything, like I said, everything's a little different. But in the end, it just goes to show you how you can take people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, different languages, different religions, different cultures, and put them in the same room, and they can all still bond together and know everything that's going on. Well, that's the equality of where I think our country needs to be.
Exactly, and I thought that was one of the most telling things that we really learned today, going through this with you and with Mike, was that Freemasonry is about focusing on the similarities between people instead of focusing on on the differences. And I thought, wow, achieving that at a global scale in modern times
and for so
is
long.
unbelievable.
Without technology.
It's crazy.
So this was done 300 years ago before, people were riding horses, paper. And when we focus on things, we don't focus on your negatives. We focus on your positives, So like me, for example, with my dyslexia, I am not the best at reading a book. I'm not the best at proofreading, obviously. There's one thing you'd never ask me to do is proofread. We all know this, but everybody knows Barry's dyslexic. But at the same time, I have other qualities of life. So what Freemason really is, you know, the motto is we take good men and make them better, you know? So what we really do is we tell you to focus on the positive sides of your life. Let's forget about the negatives. Let's take your positives and make you better. And then how can we focus that to your daily life, whether it's your wife or your kids or your significant other, whatever the case may be, you just learn. You know, you learn to become a better person. And for me, you know, like when we were talking about leadership, this is kind of why we're here. I was always a leader. I was always a go-getter. I was always, you know, wanted to make a change or a positive change, but to be able to have those tools that you've learned from a system that has been around for 300 years that works, you're going to develop good leaders.
Well, honestly,
and I'm a prime example of what Masonry could do to somebody.
It's probably helped you in ways that you might not even be, you know, acutely aware of, right?
Honestly, every day. Yeah. You know, there's some point in everyday life where I'm like, oh wow, yeah. You know, I could apply that to, wow, I did that. Like, and you don't think about it till after it happens, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But as you go, you just learn. And, you know, you have a lodge where our lodge locally has 400 members. You know, so you're in charge of 400 members who are all different opinions, different things. And there's so much that goes on that you're just there to serve. That's it. At the end of the day, you're there to serve the people. And by serving, you eventually become good at what you do and you lead. And then what's unique is a year later, I say, here you go, man. It's your turn. So a lot of what I learned in leadership is to be a leader, it's not about just yourself. In my opinion, a good leader will create more leaders behind him. Mm-hmm. You want to pass that torch. Where here we pass the gavel. You know, so when I look at like SB3 and what we've done is we created a little foothold in the detailing community, but what you don't see is me doing a lot of videos. You don't see me doing the stuff that most people would think that I've done for other brands, where, you know, other brands, I was the front guy, the face guy. I don't want to be that guy because I want to create the other leaders to be able to do that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I want other people to have the opportunity and the success that I've had. So if I do it, they're not going to get that. So like when I'm running SB3, we're trying to think of it as like, hey, I want to pass the gavel on to that next leader. Mm-hmm. And eventually, if we can build 100 leaders within the detailing industry, SB3 grows, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I looked at our growth with SB3.
Sounds a lot like Urable.
Yeah.
I'm going to be passing that down.
Yeah.
Well, it's, I mean, I think a lot of people think of leadership as like a preacher. They're up on a pedestal. They tell everybody what to think, what to do. But I think a real leader, and I think you've been really exemplifying this, is a mentor. It's, you know, getting to know people, forming relationships with people, and guiding them through that process through an example rather than just telling them what to do. And that's how you can create more leaders in the future.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's huge. Like, if I wanted to, I don't know how to say this properly, but if I wanted to lead a mission to the moon, you know, and we have 20 of us and we all want to go to the moon, I don't want to go to the guy that is a NASCAR driver. You know what I mean? I want to find the astronaut that's been there and done it, and I want him to mentor me, you know? So, in my opinion, mentors can be anybody. You know, a leader could be anybody. It's just how you do it once you get that position. You know, for me, you know, my newest, like, kick is the IDA, the International Detailers Association. I became a registered trainer. One of the reasons I did was because when I got certified as a detailer, I could not find somebody to skills validate me here in Pennsylvania. So believe it or not, I called around, everybody was busy, and at the shows, I was always busy working a booth. So I never had time to leave to go do that. So I thought, you know what, if I'm this person, there's 100 other people out there. Mm-hmm. So I thought, you know what, let's get certified, let's get skills validated, and then I had the opportunity to become a recognized trainer. Just yesterday I was today's Sunday. So Friday I was in Pittsburgh, and in Pittsburgh on the morning out of Detail King, and there we did 5 of their guys, and so now I'm on this mission of making sure that everybody has an opportunity to get certified detailing and skills validated who wants it. So that's kind of like my new mission in life. And I think by doing that, we'll grow the IDA, and you also create more detailers who will lead the way, So that's kind of, again, a lot of that comes out of Freemasonry. Yeah. How did you put that together? How do you think about it? And it's charity, I'm doing it on my own time, my own dollar. Drove to Pittsburgh, didn't want nothing, and I just wanted to improve the industry. That to me is something to be said. To be able to do that, that's the honor in it. To be able to do that,
Well, this place bleeds leaders, that's for sure.
It does.
From past presidents, from George Washington all the way up to
Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin
down there. It was funny to see. I was shocked when we got to hold letters of Franklin
awesome.
Or Washington. A letter that Washington wrote and signed.
Their penmanship was fantastic.
And they're
Beautiful.
writing that with a quill.
Yeah.
Writing that with a
so
feather.
crazy. I
Yeah,
couldn't
and then
write that well with a pen.
again another leader, Lafayette. We had Lafayette.
Yep.
I mean, 2 of the most iconic roles in what we have today. We're holding a piece of paper. They've got their signatures and they're a little bit of their story through their leaderships.
Yeah, so just a plug to anyone watching this. When you come to Philadelphia, there's a lot more than just Independence Hall.
Yes.
You really want to check out the Masonic Temple. It's directly across the street from City Hall. You can't miss it.
Yeah, it's one North Broad Street.
You can't miss it. Do yourself a favor. Block a lot of time to come in here and appreciate the history that's in here.
And ask for John and Mike.
Yeah.
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 They're good
As for
guys.
they're great guys, yeah.
So, but yeah, this is a little bit of what Barry's about, I guess you could say.
No, that's awesome. Well,
really
we
cool.
appreciate you setting this up for us so much. That was not a small task. I
No,
know.
no,
Not
not a small task.
We're in a private room right now, which
Yeah.
is absolutely phenomenal in a museum.
Yeah, it really is. But the unique thing about this building is it's still operable. We still meet here. Every night there's a meeting here probably. I mean, I'm not, where I'm an hour and a half away, but, they have meetings consistently. These rooms are being used and it still is a museum to this day. So it's
wild.
like a sitting museum that you're part of all the time,
So cool.
which is pretty unique.
So, what is the purpose of this? And there's certain rituals to become a Mason.
Okay, so there are rituals. I hate to use that word ritual.
Yeah.
You've got to put into perspective here. The oldest, going back 300 years when Masonry got started per se, recorded times, it was an oath and obligation. Okay, so you take an oath and obligation and when you're a Mason to certain things. This altar here is where we would take that obligation, our oath and obligation. Your oath basically it is what it is, and you're obligated to uphold that oath. I think the cool thing about these is these are all the same, every altar. You have here the triangle. These are what we call the 3 lesser lights or burning tapers arranged in a triangular form around the altar, representing the sun, the moon, and the worshipful master or honorable master mason chosen to run the lodge. Okay. The sun, which is the glorious orb that opens and rules the day. The moon, which follows on to govern the night. And the worshipful master, who should with no less regularity open and rule his lodge with justice and equity, or cause or allow the same to be so done. You see what I mean? And then, as we learned earlier, this is what we call the holy ground. So the worshipful master sits here. Nobody can, during an open meeting, nobody can come in from here to here because now the meeting's open and you would have a Bible there, or whatever that country's main religion is. Here in the States, a lot of it's based upon the Bible, but you'd have the Bible with some working tools. So this is like sacramental ground. You don't want to walk in here, but in a meeting, all these chairs are filled with people, And we're not doing nothing crazy. We're just talking about how much money do we owe somebody? You know what I mean? We pay our bills. We do it like a business. You know, you talk about last month's meeting to catch up to the guys who missed it. You read the minutes of the last meeting. You know, do we have any new membership? Things like that. It's not like what people think. We're not here to take over the world. We can't even organize our own pancake breakfast. That's the joke about Freemasonry, in my opinion. But it's
not a religion. Right?
No.
I think that's a misconception.
A huge misconception, because in Freemasonry you can be any religion,
right?
As long as you're a good person and believe in a power greater than yourself, a God, basically. So you know, we could all be Masons here. Well, Chris couldn't because she's a female, but if you know us three wanted to be Masons, I could be a Christian, he could be a Muslim, and you could be Hindu, whatever religion, as long as it's a good religion. You know what I mean? It's cool. Like, don't come in and say, yeah, I'm a Satanist, or, you know, I'm satanic. You know? that won't work. You know, because you're in a group that's charitable. You know, we're creating leaders. It's amazing to really see it and to be a part of it. It's something special.
Well, and I love being able to have conversations like this, because I think there's so many misconceptions across all different religions, political affiliations, and when you actually take some time and talk to somebody who's in it, you can learn so much about it, and all of this has been so fascinating for all of us to learn about. And I mean, I didn't necessarily have any, you know, bad misconceptions about Masonry, but I feel like I just know so much more about it, and I'm eager to share that information with anybody that asks about it.
It's unique. It's definitely, it's definitely, in my opinion, different. I enjoy it because, again, you put 100 Masons in a room, you're going to get 100 different answers, you know, of why they like Freemasonry or what has Freemasonry done for them. For me, it gives me a purpose. You know, I think in life, you gotta have a purpose. There's gotta be something that drives you, you know? You've gotta set goals. And I set those goals. Sometimes I hit them, sometimes I surpass them. Sometimes I fail, you know, but that's okay. I'll get back up if I fail, keep going. As to where with Freemasonry, it's so many different walks of life, so many different people, different characters. And for me, that was hard. One of my mentors always said, remember tolerance, Barry, tolerance. And it's because I'm not tolerant. I'm not a patient person. I want something, let's go get it. What Freemasonry has taught me is to kind of step back once and think a little more before you pursue something. You know, again, and that's one thing I've learned, not even trying to learn.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, one of the things that we learned as we toured this earlier was in every single one of these rooms, there's something that they purposefully make imperfect. Like I know in here, it was that little sword thing. The spear doesn't have a tip. And the concept of that was that, you know, only God is perfect and everybody else is just working on it. You know, we're all imperfect and we all have something to work on. And I think that is life. Like, that's what we're here for. We're here to always try to just be better than we were yesterday, and I love that that's one of the philosophies of this as well.
Yeah, and that's true. It is. In my opinion, we know this. Nothing is perfect. You know, if it's perfect, why be here? If that makes sense. And for me, I try not to look at anything anymore as so serious. Does that make sense? Like, I used to take my career really serious, work 15, 16 hours a day, and I realized that the more times I take something so serious, I lost everything else around me. And again, it boils down to like Freemasonry, how it teaches me that there's more to life. You know what I mean?
You and I have had those personal discussions.
Yeah, so
just about, you know, chasing the dollar.
Yeah,
that's such a hollow victory,
like
kind of thing.
So one of the working tools, you know, I'm trying not to get myself in trouble here because if some Masons watch us, but one of the working tools back then was a 24-inch gauge, a 2-foot block. Make sense? Okay, so one of the lessons that we learn with a 24-inch gauge, which is like a ruler, Chris, is that there's 24 hours in a day. Who would have thought? Back then they're using, 2-foot blocks to measure everything, and then it turned into a 24-inch gauge. And we realized that we take those 24 parts of that gauge, and we're taught to use that gauge. How? Well, you have 8 hours to rest, relaxation, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for family and God. Right there, your 24 hours. That's your day. So again, everything's done in moderation. Make sense?
Love that.
And if you get good, hopefully you could work, 6 hours a day, and then spend more time with your family if you have to. Ultimately, I'd like to have 12 hours of sleep and 12 hours of family time. You know what I mean?
That would be great.
But, yeah,
I'm getting closer every year.
But again, though, how do you get there? So you start to go to a company, but you're always stuck in that company. Like, it's hard to get away. That's what building more leaders does. Instead of hiring somebody to do a job, I've never looked at it as like, I'm going to hire you to do this job for me. I've always looked at it as, how could I lead you into this job to take you further? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you never want somebody stale, sitting in the same position.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I learned from my mentors through the years at DuPont in particular, they always told us as we were moving up through the ranks, it's like, your job is to find your replacement and train them.
Yeah.
Train them to take your position.
Yeah.
That is your job.
It's crazy when
as
you
a
think
leader. That's
and
here,
so it's a 1-year commitment. Okay, it runs from St. John's Day to St. John's Day in December to December. Here, if he gets to this chair and he's not qualified to go to this chair, because that next year we all 3 sit. You know what I mean? Because he can't replace me. So I have to make sure he's good. So you're not only running the lodge, but you're preparing the senior warden to move up into the master's chair. Otherwise, you're stuck there again. And I'll tell you, 12 months of running a lodge on top of all your other stuff, because this is all voluntary. At the 12th month, you're like, okay, I'm ready to get out. And then 3 days later, the moment you're out, you're like, man, I kind of want to go back again. I miss this, So it's like a little bit of a love-hate at the end.
Yeah.
For me, I loved it.
Do you ever cycle through more than once?
Sometimes you can. Sometimes there are people who do that. I was fortunate. I did it with 2 different lodges, but I didn't cycle through everything. I got fortunate to where I could go right to one chair because they had somebody out, and I filled in. And once I filled that chair, I had to take the obligation to go through the progressive line. Again, the oath and obligation at the altar. That's where we took those, and that's a part of it.
well, it teaches real accountability.
It does.
Like, because you're doing this in front of your fellowship.
Yeah, and
right?
it's all voluntary. We don't get paid. It's not about the money. It's about the greater good. And there's a big difference.
And personal accountability.
Yeah, a lot of personal accountability. There's a lot of nights I came home and I'm like, I don't think I got it in me tonight. And then I'm like, all right, put the tux on, get a shower, put the tux on. It's 20 minutes just to get dressed. If you're wearing a tux before you get here, But
Gotta move down to Texas, then you can just throw a t-shirt
yeah,
on.
you have to have a cowboy hat. But again, though, there's something about monthly wearing a tux. You feel good about yourself,
Yeah.
It's like you're out in sweatpants and sweatshirt. This is cool. But you put a tux on, and I'm sure you could vouch for this. When you have a jacket and tie or something, you feel better.
100%.
100%.
Yep.
Like he's wearing sweatpants and jacket, and I wear, look at this. I feel better than he does.
Look at how much better Barry looks.
But
it's a dress code, Barry.
Yeah,
I
no,
a 3-piece.
Yeah. But in all reality, that's the feeling, though. You know what I mean? Like, I know me personally. If I'm here for something, I'm wearing a jacket.
Yep.
So I'm wearing the jacket today out of respect to the Grand Lodge, not because I want to. You know what I mean? It's a Sunday afternoon.
Well, it has to be you must have a tremendous support system with your wife too, because you're committing all this time, right?
Yeah, that's a touchy thing. It gets rocky sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, because I have the obligations here in the Masonic community, but then I have the obligations in the detailing community too, which is my career path. So it's it's a very hard balance, a very difficult balance, especially with traveling. You know, my wife is home. Luckily, my son's, you know, almost 15. So he's a little more, she's not so just hanging out, changing diapers type deal. You know, he's more there, but it does get difficult when I go on the road for a week. And then I come back, you know, I'm back Sunday night and my wife works in the hospital. So she's in bed at 8 p.m. So if I get back at like 10 and then she's already asleep, she's up at 3, I wake up and then I go to work. I come home sometimes and then she's already tired. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh man, I forgot about that meeting on Monday night. Now I have a Masonic meeting. So there are times where that has happened where it is difficult. But at the same time, now that I focus more on living 8 hours of work, 8 hours of this, I'm home all the time. You know what I mean? When I'm home, I'm home. When I'm off work at 4 o'clock, I'm home. You know, I'm there with my wife, I'm there with my kids, and you don't see me going out to bars. I'm not, as much as I love a drink, you know, like last night, Friday I was in Pittsburgh. And then we drove, and then I came here, or whatever. So I went out to dinner last night. You know, I had 2 drinks at dinner, but then I went up to the room and relaxed. You know, I was in bed by 11 on a Friday night. Yeah. You know, and it's just like one of those things where like, wait, Friday night, 11 o'clock. The bars used to not even just get going yet.
Sleep for 2 hours, all right?
Yeah, so. You know, so I think some of it comes with age too, getting a little older. But yeah, it's not easy balancing it. But once you get to that point, like it happens. For me, what really suffered me personally was my weight. You know, all those years of working, I forgot to take care of myself. And that's one of the things I'm working on now, and I'm trying to lose it slowly. But I spent like the last year building up, muscling up a little bit, even though you can't tell because there's a lot of fat on me. But over the next 6 months, I'm driving it now from putting on muscle to dropping fat. Make sense? Yeah. So hopefully I can that's when I feel like I'm good. When I get my weight back down, I think that was the last piece of the puzzle where I guess you could say I'm growing and maturing. I don't know how to say it, but that's the last thing I got to work on, and I'm finally there. So it's cool. It's fun.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, I had a long career too, and I know when I came home, because I did a lot of traveling too, I was focused on just being a present dad and husband when I came home. Left whatever troubles I had in the garage, and when I entered the house, there was no mood. I came in, I spent time with the kiddies.
I can very much vouch for that. Like I was never suspicious of any stress going on. Maybe that was just me being a kid and just being unaware, but yeah, I feel like you were always the same dad that walked in the door every single day.
Well, Vicki and I, my wife and I, we tried to really manage a no moods household. And that was just, one of the things I thought, because as I was moving up, in the leadership ranks at DuPont in particular, it was heavy. That was a heavy weight I was carrying, because now you're not just responsible for yourself. Now you're responsible for these giant teams of people, and their livelihood and the decisions that you make, they matter.
Yeah, a lot.
So I really own that, as a leader. But I had to make sure that the kids didn't feel that stress that I was carrying.
That's hard to do. Like, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that. For me,
but I think we're all a work in progress in that regard.
That's one of the things where I know I can improve on. There's a lot of good talents that I have, but for me, especially in today's world where everything's electronic, it's hard to keep the business away from home. Mm-hmm. Somebody messages us and says, "Hey Barry, how do I do this?" And it comes right to my phone beeps, I'm sitting on the couch relaxing, and then it's like a part of me wants to say, "All right, get it right away." And the other part of me says, "You're not working, this ain't working hours." But
I'm giving side eyes to this guy here.
I'm the worst right now, right? So, she's mentoring me.
Yeah. Chris, did you get the message? Did you get the message? Chris, did you answer it?
Yeah, you know how it is. But then it's like, okay, well, I got to get back to this person. And then, so that's where I really struggle, but luckily my wife goes to bed at 8, for her work. So, my son, he's 15, he's either out chasing girls now or out playing a video game or throwing football. So I'm like, another couple of years I'll be cool again, but right now I'm not. But for me again though, so I'll wait till like 8 o'clock when my wife goes to bed. You know, I learned that when she goes to bed, she's in bed. So from 8 o'clock to like 10, I can be up there working, you know, getting back to people, talking to them, and you know what? They're happy. They just want a response. You know, usually it don't have to be right away.
Well, I think that's such a prevalent issue that people deal with, especially in this industry, is the work-life balance. Like, so many people struggle with that we talk to, and I think a big purpose behind Urable was just helping people with taking time away from their business. Like, they have something that automates certain things, they have something where they have peace of mind because it's organized, and they can get home to their families and not have to think about work anymore. Because that's been something that I think we've been really blessed to have, and obviously right now we work together, so we're always together. We have all the family time. But I think that's something that we want to see throughout the entire industry is make sure that people still have that balance, because that family time, you can't get it back. You know, once it's gone, and, you know, just savor that, especially when the little kids are running around the house. So that was definitely a big purpose behind Urable.
It's huge. It's huge, because here's the thing. Like, for me, I'm speaking totally from experience. I was working 8 to 16-hour days. I was miserable for years. Even though I never looked it, I never talked about it, I was miserable. I was so addicted to work, I felt guilty watching football on a Sunday afternoon. And I thought I should have been working. That's how bad it was. Jeez. And, you know, I had to go, you know, working some nights till 9, some nights till 11. You know, Saturday I'm back in, you know, now it's my turn to get caught up because I was leading everybody else, or, you know, controlling stuff and make things happen. Luckily, I had, you know, a good shop manager, Scott, who's now our partner. But at the same time, Saturday was my time, you know? So now it was me, okay, now what do I gotta do? I gotta call up payroll, I gotta call up on the hours. And next thing you know, I was going into work for 2 hours just to get caught up. And it's 6 o'clock on a Saturday, and my wife's calling me saying, hey, you coming home so we can have dinner soon? And I'm like, that's not practical. But the worst part was I felt guilty the next morning on a Sunday if I woke up and I didn't get to work. I felt guilty, but I didn't feel guilty about missing my family. That's when I knew there were issues, you know? And the problem with the detailing world is now so many detailers have that issue. And the reason they have that issue, I think, is because when you look at society, everybody, you hear the word scale, you hear growth. I want to scale my business. I want to grow my business. I want $1 million business. I want the $2 million business. But we're detailers. There's nothing wrong with making $100,000 a year. And in our society, everybody says, oh, you're poor if you make $100,000 a year. You're poor if you make $200,000. You got to make $1 million. No, you don't. You can live an amazing life washing cars by yourself 40 hours a week. You can make $150,000. After everything's done, you make $100,000 and live your life. Like, if I could do it all over again, that's probably the route I'd go. Because you make $1 million, but, you know, there was a guy posted on the forums, I made $1 million and I walked away with $90 when it was said and done.
Oh my gosh. Amen to that.
And then, you know, and then he's complaining about how he's working 60-hour weeks. And I read it and I'm like, dude, I can tell you everything that's wrong with your business because I did it. I know what you're going through. I got out of it, you know. But you tell somebody that, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to listen. It's one of those things where, I hate to say it, but you have to live and learn. And when you're ready to learn with an open mind, give me a call.
Yeah, and hopefully you didn't screw up your
Yeah,
marriage
correct.
and, you know, your job as a husband and wife.
That's huge because I was there. I mean, I probably screwed it up hundreds of times over the years. But at the same time, it always was strong enough.
But you bring a great perspective then to others in the industry.
Yeah, and
right?
you learn.
And this is, again, why we're doing this, to really pull leaders from the industry out, because you've got a lot to give back to move the needle for so many people.
Yeah.
So it's just awesome, you know, that you agreed to join us here today.
Oh, absolutely. You know that.
Yeah, we were getting some Illuminati vibes when we first walked in here, but we left that at the door. That's totally not what I'm getting now. You know,
Yeah, I can't tell you anything about that.
To be fair, we haven't seen any of the secret tunnels.
Yeah, where's
yet.
the tunnels?
We'll talk to the curator. But yeah, I mean, again, leadership to me, I think it's all about building the next leader.
Yep.
You know, turning the gavel over, you could say, I think.
Yeah.
If I could do it, if I could say that again and again. But then the other issue too is when you talk about leadership, is I have a business partner, Scott, we're 50-50, you know? So it's not just, SB3 wasn't all built off of me. You know, he had 50% of the hustle the whole way through. And what's unique about us is we're completely two different people. Even though we're a lot alike, we laugh, we joke, we have fun, we're gonna banter the hell out of each other, you know? Me, I like to spend money. Him, he's cheap. You know?
Great combo.
Yeah.
You guys balance each other out.
Yeah.
We do. We, crazy or not, we balance each other off amazingly well. You know, I mean, just so many different parts of our life are the same, but yet we're two completely, it's crazy to think how completely different we are, but it's like a yin and a yang, you know? Yeah. It's like, it works. And for us, like, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Scott. You know, a lot of my success has come from Scott's. Scott, you know, learning the trade, coming in, you know, he deserves every percent of every success that I've had with business in SB3. And he's just a quiet guy, you know, that won't take it but he's a good guy, and I'm pretty fortunate. Again, so I can go to Scott and say, hey, Scott, you know, I'm struggling here, can you help me? You know, and he'll usually say, nope, or he'll say, sure. You know, if he says no, then I'll find somebody else. But, you know, I think another quality of a good leader is being open.
Yep.
You know, realizing what you're good at, what you're not good at, and push on the things that you are good at.
Yeah, and you know, this is a huge one too that you just touched on. Being a leader doesn't mean you have all the answers. You still need to ask the questions and
Correct.
seek out help from others.
Yeah, I do it all the
Right.
time. I do it, you know, I have friends in the industry. You know, if I have a question, like I recently spoke at the Advanced Nanotechnology Show, okay? And I can speak on anything. You say, Barry, what do you want to talk about in automotive detailing? I'll tell you to pick a subject. And then we'll start from there. I can talk about anything, whether it's business, compounds, polishes, pads, whether it's cleaning, whatever, it don't matter, you know? But when I stepped in this Advanced Technology Show, all of a sudden it was about ceramic coatings, but it was about ceramic coatings with computer components, ceramic coatings on solar. I was in there with manufacturers, developers, chemists who had degrees that I can't even pronounce or never even heard of, you know? And I was nervous. And a lot of my speaking comes, you know, at a Masonic event or, you know, through the detailing community, and I'm not nervous at all. But when it was time for me to step out of that box, I was nervous, like genuinely nervous. And I'll never forget it. I picked up the phone, called Rennie Doyle. He didn't answer the first time. Finally got a hold of him. I said, hey man, I just need someone to talk to. You know, let me get this off my chest. Let me tell you, I'm afraid, I'm scared. How do I get to point B? You know, and he just said, you know what, just be yourself. And he walked me through it. It was easy, and then boom, done. You know, awesome. Same with Rennie. He knows if I can help him with something, he knows my strong points. Call me, I'll be there. But I have 500 friends that I can do that to. You know, in the fraternity, there's thousands. You know, so yeah, I think it's good to have an open mind.
Yeah,
very good to have an open mind.
So Barry, I want to say thank you to you and the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania as well for allowing us to, you know, be in this momentous place and have all these incredible things around us. So there's always one message that we like to capture at the end, and I want to hear what your message is to our whole industry, not just about leadership, but just something that you can give back that you've noticed in your life. That's, you know, your powerful place or thing that you can leave for everybody else.
Oh man, that's huge. I wouldn't even know, to me, where to start with that. I think there's a lot of positive things going on. In general, I think if I could leave something with everybody, it would be to leave our industry a better place than when it was for you. That's been my goal. When I came in, it was horrible. We didn't have the tools, the technology, the pads, the equipment, you know. Transformed now, almost 30 years, as we found out today, which is horrible. I don't want to think about. But today I feel what I'm doing for the industry, or trying to do for the industry now, is just leave it a better place. You know, I think if we could work together, everybody comes together, we could create standards, and I believe the IDA is that chance of that happening. So if you're not a member, I would say join the IDA and be a part of it. Don't just join, be active. That's what it takes, I think.
Being part of this incredible group that you have here with the Masons and the Brotherhood, if you could go back 30 years ago and tell yourself one piece of advice, what might that be?
If your business hours say 5 o'clock is when you close at 5 o'clock, and you leave at 5 o'clock and go home at 5 o'clock, and don't go back until it's open again. I see far too many guys putting the hours in, putting the work in, and it's gonna kill them. You know, use moderation. That'd be my word of advice.
8, 8, and 8.
Yep.
Simple and easy. Thanks, brother.
Yep, no worries.
Appreciate it.